Yo, what's up? It's Jason. I'm finally back with the next edition of this series, the best of the 90s, going year by year. And I had a little delay here as I had to locate some stuff for the best of 93. Everything was in my collection, but as always, with this many records, you misplace one record. I literally spent like 2-3 days looking for one of these records. Found it. And then there was some debate about what to keep into this list or not. I really had pulled about 15 or 16 records, CDs for this thing. I could have went more actually for 93. But I've narrowed it down to 10. And it's mostly in the genres of obviously some death metal in the early 90s, some techno in the 90s that I was really getting into, and hip-hop as well. So 1993 is a real transition year for me music-wise. I'm kind of done with the grunge thing already because that was like 91, 92. I didn't follow all of the Nirvana albums, but I was aware of them. After Nevermind. Still into hip-hop, but the golden era is just about done. Really, I put the golden era at 86 to 1993, so this would be like the death nail of it. And there's two really good albums. I got 3 hip-hop in here, but there's 2, well, all 3, I guess, representative of the end of the golden era, for me anyway. But also, 1993 is the first year I DJ'd a underground rave. So very small party on the Atlantic coast, small tiny warehouse party, and I remember going to play it with my hip hop buddies, and on the drive back all my buddies were kind of like, man, I don't know, like that was pretty weird. That was pretty out there, people tripping and all that kind of stuff. I was like, you know what, I like this. I think I'm gonna keep going on with this stuff. And then in 1994 I moved to Montreal, totally explored all the underground club scene, rave scene there. There were like 2 raves a week easily, plus the underground clubs, plus the after hour parties, all that stuff, the loft parties. Really cool scene. So I got a couple of techno records to show, obviously, from 1993. Pivotal years, a couple of 3 really great releases. But let's start off in the death metal zone. So I was not listening to metal at all in 93. This is a much more recent journey for me into some of the 90s metal, underground 90s metal, because for me, I had thought, I was into thrash as a kid and early black metal first wave, and for me I thought that metal was pretty much dead by the late 80s. It was hair metal or Guns N' Roses, that kind of thing. But man, there was some cool shit going on in the underground. In Sweden, for example, this band, Edge of Sanity. Now, it's taken me a couple of times to get into Edge of Sanity, actually. Truth be told, I had the album, I think, before this one, and sold it, the Unorthodox album. Didn't quite grasp the whole concept of death metal meets progressive with some synthesizers and keyboards, and a little bit disjointed. This record, I feel, is much more in the pocket, band-wise, song-wise, for this stuff. Or maybe I just warmed up to the whole concept. But yeah, 13 tracks in total. It's on Black Mark, which is Bathory's label. Edge of Sanity, the Spectral Sorrows album from 1993. Did not hear this when it came out in 1993. Only picked it up in the last year or so, actually, this reissue. Yeah, just really good death metal with these progressive elements. Makes it kind of interesting overall to listen to. So that's going to be my number 10. My number 9 is going to be an absolute heavy metal rager. This band is also a little hit and miss for me too, I have to say. And not a band I was into in the late 80s. Getting not really on my radar. Really the only metal that was on my radar in the late 80s, 90s was Slayer, but I would put this definitely up with Slayer. Morbid Angel's Covenant album, which is like their 3rd album. I should mention, by the way, the cover art of this thing. What is it? Dan Seagrave, I think. Yeah, Dan Seagrave, the artist of this, has done some Morbid Angel cover artwork and Tombed as well. And I think he lives in Canada, according to Wikipedia. Morbid Angel, though, Covenant. Wow, this is a total ripper. Rip your face off. Thrash slash death metal. Early death metal stuff, right? And good album. Slamming album. 10 tracks. Does all the business that you need right there. Blood on My Hands. Vengeance is Mine. Pain Divine. Good Morbid. One of my favorite Morbid Angels. I don't know. I like the first 3 albums, pretty much. And then we don't talk about the later stuff. But so that's number 9. Number 8. Another band that's kind of new to me, and man, they're not new to anybody else. She was around in the death metal scene of the early 90s. Benediction. Man, I loved their first album before this. I already ranked that pretty high in my best in 1990, I'm pretty sure, because that one had Barney on the vocals from Napalm Death. This one, they got a new singer. Barney's left for Napalm Death, and this one is Dave Ingram, the one and only legendary. I think he was in Bolt Thrower too. But yeah, it's got just a great deep growl, almost as good as Barney, not quite. But Transcend the Rubicon, guttural death metal from Birmingham, UK. Yeah, Benediction. Great band. Totally new band to me, really. As I've gotten more into death metal in the last couple of years. That one is definitely a favorite. So, that where are we at now? That was number 7? That was number 8. Number 7 is next. I'm going to go with some hip-hop here, and Cypress Hill's album, Black Sunday. Now, I can't remember, I don't think I had the full-length album, but I've always had a copy of Insane in the Membrane single, which was huge. Insane in the Brain. Killer single off this one. That alone puts this in the top 10, really. But the other tracks are really dope, too. I mean, Lick a Shot, Cock the Hammer, Ain't Going Out Like That. Yeah, those are some of the good ones on here. There's a hell of a lot. There's a lot of dope smoking tracks on here, for sure. So it starts off with I Want to Get High, and you got also bongs or something in here too. It's a lot of bong action. I'm looking for the track right now. Hand on the Glock? No. It's either hands on guns or hands on weed of some sort. All of which is just kind of a little bit funny. Hits from the Bong. Okay, Hits from the Bong, number 10 on this album. All just a little bit funny nowadays that weed is legal, but back then this would have been kind of controversial, I guess. Not as good as their debut. Still my fave, Cypress Hill, but better than a lot of the other stuff that comes out later that kind of lose track of. So it's still a pretty standout album. And really the Black Sunday album kind of owning that whole heavy metal kind of look to the hip-hop release. Black Sabbath kind of influence. Just great band from LA, Cypress Hill. That's my number 7. So now I'm in my number 6. Just double check here. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 6, I'm going to go with a monster of an album. Kind of in the pop realm. And this band has already been in the top 10 before, in 1990, in fact. A better album, I'd say, in 1990. But this one has really grown on me a lot, too. And this is Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode. Just picked up a cheap-ass copy of this at the thrift shop. I Feel You has been just creeping back into my playlist lately for some crazy reason. This is the one where they kind of went a little bit more alt-rock after Violator. Violator was just an absolute masterpiece, so really you can't quite repeat it. It'd be kind of silly to do that. But this one almost drove the band nuts. In fact, one of the band members left after the recording of this record. Flood was in charge of a lot of the production. He had just done production with U2 for Octung Baby, and one of his ideas, I guess, was to make the band all live in the same house while they wrote songs. That was a bit of a disaster. They were not used to doing that. They were all used to doing their own thing, kind of thing. But I've never seen Depeche Mode live, and sadly, some members have gone and passed away. But still on my bucket list to see them live. But this is a killer album. Walking in My Shoes is really good too. Judas, In Your Room. There's about 3 or 4 singles that were off this, and it did have that more rock flavor to the band, but well done. Still electronic. Still lots of cool shit going on in there. All right, number 5. Number 5, I am gonna go with. I'm gonna go with this one. Number 5, I'm gonna go into some techno territory here now, and I'm gonna go with what I consider the debut album by this artist, but I guess it's his second album because he did one earlier under a different name. Richie Hawtin is the man I'm talking about, and his alias here, Plastikman, released on his own label, +8 Records, out of Canada, Windsor, Canada, and that's the logos there. Double pack album version without the cover. The British version of this album, which is called Sheet 1, actually has the Plastikman logo and on little tiny white tablets, which I think the story was that somebody, at least one person, got busted before with this album cover, the CD cover, and where the cops or whoever thought it was actually acid tablets made to look like that. So yeah, Plastikman's debut album, Sheet 1. This is solid minimal techno at its best. It's early minimal techno. Still a lot of acid in here and trancey kind of vibes. I was reading to like Richie Hawtin, who is part British Canadian, grew up outside of Windsor near Detroit, heavily influenced by Detroit. It's part of the second wave of Detroit techno artists. His dad, I guess, was into a lot of Tangerine Dream and that kind of electronic music, and you can definitely hear some of that influence in here. There's some definite mellow, ambient kind of passages. Some tracks are 11 minutes long, for example. Trying to think what my favorites on here are. Spastic, I guess, and Plasticity. Gak. Basically, all the ones on this one are really good. You got Smack, Coma, and Vox on this one. I don't think that this is as good as his next album. I think the Music album from '94 was his best, or better than this one, just in terms of more really dope tracks. But this has at least 2 or 3 really good ones, and it was just kind of one of those, like, you know, early masterpieces to come out of Detroit/Windsor. Minimal techno from Plastikman. So that's gonna be my number 5. I almost put it higher because it is a full length, and some of the stuff I'm going to show next are EPs, if not singles. I'm going to break my rule here of showing only albums or EPs, but what the hell. This one is my next 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, number 4. I had to show this, and this is the one I spent like 3 days looking for, by the way, so I'm definitely going to include this as my number 4. This is a pretty obscure release by a fairly well-known techno artist. This is the Quoth EP, I'm going to call it. It's got 3 tracks, and that is Richard D. James, aka Aphex Twin, right there coming down the stairwell. It's on Warp Records. Here he's going by the pseudonym Polygon Window, and I've had this record ever since it came out in '93. An absolute stomper of a techno track. I mean, I think it would hold up pretty well with any good thrash metal, drum-wise anyway. It's pretty much all drums, just really banging, rhythmic, clanging drums that are maybe like metallic or a little bit of an industrial vibe to it, on clear wax. And so you got 2 versions of Quoth, which is the jam, definitely. Wooden Thump mix on one side, and original on the other. And then you got Akita and another track called Bike Pump Meets Bucket. Always known for a little bit of humor, Richard James. Yeah, this is really the only, I think currently is like the only Aphex Twin I have on vinyl. Maybe I have a couple other singles, but this is my favorite Aphex Twin release. And it's not even under that name, it's under Polygon Window. The single's called Quoth. I think it was actually part of a series called the Artificial Intelligence series or something like this on Warp Records out of the UK. A total gem. in my opinion, in my collection. Number 3, I'm gonna go into some hip hop again. I got 2 hip hop left, and I got 1 techno record. Spoiler alert. So I'm gonna go with the band out of New York City. Kind of the end for me. This is kind of the end of the era for golden era. In fact, it's kind of like a new era is starting to begin with this album, this band. So it's sort of a good prelude to what comes next in the late 90s for hip hop. I'm thinking of the Raucous label and that kind of underground hip hop that was really minimalist and not a lot of samples, a little darker. Here's some of the roots of that on here with this Black Moon album. Enter the Stage. This is a just totally sick debut album by Black Moon. I think maybe they did something after this, but they just kind of fell apart, and they had like their crew. There's the other guys, Smith and Wesson and stuff. Cool thing is, in '94 I moved to Montreal, and I actually got to see these guys live at a club there. So that was pretty sick. I think they were calling it themselves kind of backpack hip hop at the time, because they all wore backpacks or something. But yeah, it's just kind of brutal, hardcore hip hop in your face, kind of rapping. A little bit minimalist on the samples, but there's some just totally sick bass lines. Check out a track like Slave, which is not on all the versions of this album, I think. Duck 'Em Down and Who Got the Props were the singles. And I Got You Open, which was a killer single as well. I have that on 12-inch. My CD copy is pretty damaged goods. Hard to find this. It was not reissued. I don't think it's been reissued. I don't know. Black Moon's my number 3. All right, we got to move this along. So I'm going to go number 2 with an absolute legendary techno track. This guy also produces great house music, and he runs this label and the sister label as well. And we're talking about Curtis here at this point, aka Green Velvet. Got to show this one. This could almost be my number 1. These top 3 could kind of go back and forth in terms of how many plays that they've gotten over the years. But this one really standout EP. I think it's the first Green Velvet full EP. It's on Relief Records, 702. They were all numbered from 700 series, so this is like the second release of the label, the Velvet Tracks. But most people know it from the key A-side track, The Preacher Man, where he samples Black Preacher just talking about people living together in sin, not getting married, and people playing house all day long kind of thing, with this sort of menacing, dark, brooding kind of acid Jack in House line going on and on. It just kind of works you up into a moment. So yeah, it's a great track. Takes up the whole side A, and then the B side you got 2 tracks. You got Off the Hook and They Came from Outer Space. At least one of which kind of sounds, I think, a little bit more like an instrumental version of The Preacher Man in a way. But yeah, early Jack in House from that Chicago style. Green Velvet also records as Cashmere for the more housey stuff, but this is the more hard-hitting techno, but with that jacking swing beat as well. Killer single, killer EP, still played a lot today. Still holds up. Number 1, what else is it going to be? It's going to have to be these guys. Definitely. I had no copies of this actually, but a week ago I went from no copies to having a CD and a vinyl version. I decided to pick it up in Toronto. I've had copies of this on wax, off and on, reissues, and then sold them. But it's an absolute classic. And I got it, of course, on cassette when it first came out. So 36 chambers. Yeah, just I want to say we were blown away when it came out, but it was kind of more like, yeah, this is really solid continuation of dope hip hop. You know, like we'd already listened to Paris and Public Enemy and Eric B. and Rakim and Big Daddy Kane, etc. But yeah, there was something a little bit special to this as well. I mean, the skits and the sampling of the kung fu stuff, and it was like a group. I mean, there were groups before, like Stetsasonic comes to mind, or Original Concept even. But yeah, this was modern and current from 1993. The sample. So yeah, this is going to have to be my #1 pick for 1993, Wu-Tang's Enter the Wu-Tang. They did other albums afterwards, but none of them ever really matched the veracity of the debut, and just the killer tracks that were on this one, right? Bring the Ruckus is the start off. Protect Your Neck, Cream, it's a hit. Method Man, he had his own single, right? And then he did his solo stuff. Tears, The Mystery of Chess Boxing, Nothing to F With. I mean, yeah, they're all classics. Many people can rhyme along to these. Stuck in our brains forever. I have a couple singles from this OG presses, but this is a reissue copy, and I think this is a fairly older copy, a CD copy of it as well. So that's my picks, top 10 for 1993, a long one.